Conversation presented by Wheelhouse Custom Color. I'm Jed Toffer. Thanks for listening. You know, my wife Vicki and I have owned and operated our photography studio, V Gallery, for 20 years now. Wheelhouse has been our lab for the last 16 of those years, and we could not be happier. Wheelhouse is a family-run business, just like ours. If you haven't already, check them out at whcc.com. And if you want to drop me a line, feel free to email me at jed@whcc.com. Well, here it is, episode 100. It's been about 2 years since this conversation presented by Wheelhouse Custom Color got up and running. And what a fantastic 2 years it's been. I've had the honor and the privilege of speaking with some of my favorite people, not only in the industry, but in my life. I've experienced everything from nervousness to exhilaration, from deep sorrow to profound joy, from unexpected tears to bellowing guffaws. I've been educated, enlightened, empowered, and entertained. And I hope you have as well. My guest this week has been one of the more important people in my life for the last 16 to 17 years. Mike Hanline is my boss, my mentor, and most of all, my friend. He's been an amazing example of patience and fortitude over the years. And I can't imagine a more appropriate guest for my 100th episode. Thanks for listening, friends. I look forward to the next 100.
I'm the guy that's responsible for the Tootsie Roll Pops. That's the one thing that I've done.
That's your claim to fame?
That I can mark my career with. I don't have responsibility for the Blow Pops. Those were a suggestion by one of the forums back in the early 2000s, right. Yes. That not everybody's a Tootsie Roll Pop fan, but there are some people out there that like Blow Pops.
Also, when there were things like forums.
Forums. Well, yeah, Facebook's the forum for everybody, right?
No,
there used to be forums. There used to be the Pro Forum, and there used to be the Digital Wedding Forum, and other forums.
ILP, I think, was one.
Now there's, there you go. I love photography. We were very, very popular on all those forums.
Yeah.
Back in 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so forth and so on.
But you've been in the lab business always. Right? You kind of
the first 2.5 years of my life, my parents owned a studio.
Oh.
So I wasn't in the lab business then, but I was only 2.5. So my parents, when I was 2.5, sold their portrait studio that they'd had since right after World War II, moved from Minnesota to Kansas City, and my dad got in something called the school photography industry as a lab. And the school photography industry was still pretty new back then. And so I grew up in a lab that did predominantly school work that later expanded into portrait wedding work and one thing or another. But I've been this is all I've ever done, so to speak.
Right.
Now, when people ask me like stuff, I say I'm 46 years as an adult, this is what I've been doing. Yeah.
And you came to Minnesota and you jumped on Wheelhouse Custom Color in 1996.
I did. I actually came to Minnesota in the fall of 1994, and I worked at another company for a year and a half that served the lab industry. It was an equipment company. But that soon became very boring, like the first week. But then I hooked up with a fellow named Webb White, who had this little bitty color lab called Wheelhouse Custom Color. And he was kind of looking for a partner because about half the work at the lab came from his studio. He photographed about 400 weddings a year. And they basically printed 5x7s and 8x10s and put them in matted albums.
And that was pretty much it.
And then, his other clients were his contract wedding photographers. So they had clients in about a 25-mile radius of the Twin Cities and ran a pickup and delivery service. Wheelhouse's first shipping department was me in 1996. And that was when I came up with the Tootsie Roll Pops.
That's how it happened.
If I remember right, that's how it happened.
Now you have two boys. They're both in the business. But Chris is a bit older. when did he start, and what did that look like when Chris came on board?
Well, Chris just turned 35.
Like 2 days ago.
Yeah. And Tim's 29, going on 30. They're 5.5 years apart. Chris was our son that grew up on a keyboard. Mm-hmm. And I can remember taking him to the lab in Kansas City, the old lab, before we came to Minnesota. He was 2.5, 3 years old, and he just I set him up with a old Mac Plus with a keyboard, and he just sit there and bang on the keys for hours. That turned into Whitehouse later on down the road. But no, Chris started working. Actually, he started doing like some digital enhancement and file correction for people at home when he was in high school, and maybe even before that. And then he's really our first IT guy at White House, and that really started in earnest late 90s. Right. So he would have been 14, 15, 16 years old. And he was our only IT person until I think the spring of 2008. So we'd already grown dramatically, and he was kind of the architect of all of it from an IT standpoint.
How important was Chris's presence? Because this is, in my mind, this is what I always think of it. So I'd like to hear it from you. How important was his presence regarding the industry-changing switch from film to digital?
His presence was that's a tough question.
I ask because from our standpoint, when we were looking for labs for our studio in 01, 02, we go digital, right? From my perspective, we go digital, and no one seemed to have it figured out. But we didn't know about you guys. We found out about you guys because we were getting these posters back that were right on the money.
Right. You
guys had it figured out.
Right.
And in my mind, I've always thought that Chris was a big part of that.
He was, very much so. Back in those days, the systems were really simple.
Yeah.
And as far as they actually didn't exist on how to submit digital orders. And we started doing that in late 99, early 2000, and we came up with a little system we called Thrifty Prints, where you prepped your files and then you put them in folders by what sizes you wanted. By today's standards, people would laugh at that.
But it was awesome then.
It worked really, really well. But the key to that, the overriding key to that, was that you didn't have to color correct anything.
Right.
Because if you want 3 8x10s, you put 3 files in there.
Right.
So, the files had to come in print ready.
Right.
And Chris had a very big impact on that from a lot of different perspectives, including in the early days. He would go to somebody's studio and make sure they were calibrated and make sure that they knew what they were doing on their end as far as tagging files and all those things that 90% of the industry didn't even realize existed.
Right.
And we were converting lots of photographers to our little homespun system of printing because when they got them back, they were perfect.
Right.
So we managed the printers properly. We helped photographers through Chris, for the most part, learn how to calibrate and manage their files. And it was a huge win-win for everybody because they got files back literally within 48 hours that were printed beautifully, where the other labs were taking them and taking 3 weeks and delivering them, and then they were yellow or they were green or they were light or they were dark. And I think you and Vic went through that.
We did.
And so you convinced her that our system was better. It worked good.
It didn't take much.
And so now here we are sitting talking on these microphones together. So, but Chris had a big impact on that. But it wasn't just Chris.
Sure.
I remember those days when we'd get a new client, and typically it would happen on the phone, right? And they'd call and say, "Hey, I'm so-and-so, and I want to send you work." and it might be a 20, 30, 40-minute phone call.
Right.
And I was doing all that.
Right. That was your.
And that eventually came down to a new client questionnaire, and you submit 5 files, and you get test prints made, and boom, boom, boom. It got quicker and quicker and quicker, and people got more self-sufficient on color calibration and knowing what to do. But there were a lot of things that we did in those early years that Chris had an impact on. For instance, everybody thought you had to send in TIFF files to get good prints.
Yeah, that's what we were told.
And we said, no. Here, I got to watch my language. We said, no, you don't. All you got to do is send in a level 10 JPEG.
A level 10 even. That always
level
struck me
10,
too.
and
Because
I
that's
tell you-
half the size of a level 12.
And I spent hours talking to people saying, it'll look beautiful. We can print your level 10 JPEG, and we can print your TIFF. You will not be able to tell the difference between the files. So we proved it to people. But what we did a test, and Chris and I did this back in those days. And at level 9, we determined that you could see no difference. So we upped it 1 notch and said that's the standard. And I think at least for a decade or more, the entire industry followed that standard.
Well,
I'm not sure what it is today because the world's so different.
Well, we still do the same. We haven't changed that on our end. I do know that it doesn't seem like as big of a deal now, but to send in a 1.5 meg
yeah,
file
it was a huge deal
as opposed to a 28 meg file.
Yeah, and some of those level 10 compressions could be as low as 200 or 300K depending upon the size of the print.
Of course, right.
And when we were transferring files in on something called FTP, that people would say, "What does that stand for?"
Right.
And the speed at which it could come in played a large role in the early days.
Well, to go from burning things on CD and then having to ship that and mail that as opposed to just FTP, my whole entire life changed when that happened.
Yeah, see, it's just like everything else in life is that if you find out if you can engineer a better, quicker path, everybody's life gets easier.
Right.
And if everybody's life gets easier, you can make more money.
Right.
I mean, that's eventually what it leads to, besides being happier.
Well, it saves you time. It gives you time. Time equals money.
Yeah, I mean, I remember those early days that we're talking about here, and basically, if you were dealing with XYZ Color Lab and they had a Christmas cutoff of November the 18th, our Christmas cutoff was December the 22nd or 23rd.
Yeah, right.
And it basically, for the astute, aggressive photographer, it extended their season and their ability to make more money by 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, because there's plenty of clients, on their end that aren't ready until after Thanksgiving.
Right.
And
actually, that's a big deal, yeah.
You open up a whole new world, essentially, to people.
I mean, I still read about cutoff dates in mid-November, and I'm going, why?
Right.
The world moves a little quicker than that.
Did you have, I've seen like the newspaper articles and stuff that people started doing on you guys. When do you think you and or him had a sense that this was really going to turn into something more than just a small team of a dozen people?
You just, I don't know, you get on the bike and you pedal it as hard as you can, and you get there. We had some years that were just blurs because we did take off and we grew. But the timing was right. A lot of things lined up for us in that regard. But it really took off in 2003, 2004. But we'd been laying the foundation for that for 3 or 4 years already. Mm-hmm. So when it took off, we were ready. When we announced our press card division in 2005, it was like, it was a big deal then.
Yeah.
And so we got some press because some of the equipment vendors that we were utilizing their equipment and buying their equipment started doing some PR work with it. And then we were on the Inc. 500 for 7 straight years, which is a long run. Mm-hmm. And we were on the local Minnesota thing. I think we were on for 9 years, the Fast 50. I'm not sure there's anybody been on there that long.
Right.
So our growth was sustained for a period of time, and was beyond expectations. But like I said, a lot of things lined up. It wasn't just everything we were doing internally. It was things in the marketplace, and there's a long list of those things.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what I think your specialty or your wheelhouse is, and that's relationships. I think that you're the man when it comes to that.
Well, that's nice of you to say, Jed.
Well, I think you have a gift. I don't know how cognizant you are of it, but you have a way of making people feel valued, which I think is a really big deal. I think it's a bigger deal today than it ever has been. But you've always brought that to the table, and I've talked to a lot of people or heard a lot of people say outside of your presence that you have been a mentor to them. How aware of that have you been over the years?
Not.
Really?
I like people.
Mm-hmm.
I like younger people right now because I'm older.
Okay.
I like to see people succeed. I like to feel like if I can help somebody succeed, there's nothing but positive things that come out of that.
Yeah.
Not that I'm selfish, but if I help a guy, let's just pick a name, Gary Hughes.
Yep.
And if I can do something to help Gary Hughes succeed, then we help ourselves succeed through generating more work. But genuinely, I like people. And I think that if you want to be a relationship person, that's what makes the world go around.
Mm-hmm.
And my relationships aren't just externally with photographers. I mean, I might know everybody's name that works here.
Yeah.
I just think that everybody can benefit from everybody else in the right environment, treated with the right respect.
As you've gotten older, now we're in 2019, you've seen a lot. And a lot in the last, we'll say 20 years in particular. People often ask you about, I've heard people ask you about, and people come to you to talk about the state of the industry. So at the risk of asking you about something that you've literally discussed 1,000 times, can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, I think the state of the industry is a very broad brush to start with. That the photography industry, there's a number of subsets within that overall industry, and that the niche that we fill is pretty narrow. Now, that being said, the subsets, the lines are getting fuzzier and grayer in between them all. But 8x10 is an 8x10, whether it's a landscape or a newborn or a boudoir or whatever it is, but basically the portrait wedding industry. And the state of that industry is constantly in flux. And if you look at the industry in general, you look at America's buying habits in general, things change over time. And so if you want to look at the 20 years, I've basically been at Whitehouse, and some of the things that we've done there, I could throw that into 3 or 4 significant buckets at what was making those changes occur, and whether it be technology or market forces or whatever, and you can meander and migrate through those things, and so it's very good to be aware of them.
How do you stay on top of it? How do
you stay on top of it? It's easy.
How? It doesn't sound easy.
Well, you get old and you do it for a long time. No, the thing that I think has always been very significant for us is that Whitehouse as a team, I think, has stayed very close in touch with its client base, thus with the marketplace. And you accomplish that by being in it and not sitting behind your desk thinking you know what's going on. And I don't care if you've been in the business 10 years or 40. Unless you're out there, boots on the ground.
In the trenches, so to speak.
In the trenches, talking to people, finding out what's on people's minds, finding out where they see the weaknesses, finding out where they think the market's going, finding out where they think economics are impacting them, good or bad. make all the difference in the world. So that's how you do it. You get out there and you visit people and you talk to people and you take them to Fleming's for dinner and buy a steak. Or in your case, a big tomahawk steak, along with a couple of seafood platters to go with it, Judd. So, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
And you do it on the trade show floor, although they're getting fewer and further in between.
Yeah.
And you do it by visiting people, and you do it by online today and watching everything that's online and watching the right people online for the right reasons. So things change quickly these days.
Keeping that in mind, what is something that has happened? This might put you on the spot a little bit, but what's something that has happened? Because you said 3 or 4 different buckets or 4 or 5 different buckets over the last 20 years. What's something that's happened you did not anticipate?
Probably the dramatic impact of digital-only professional photographers.
How so?
Well, because people create content.
Yeah.
But they monetize it by selling the content. They don't monetize it by selling products that they can profit from as well.
Right.
And I have to say, the extent that has happened has surprised me a bit.
Is it a surprise because why would they do that when it seems as though they're leaving money on the table type of thing? Is that why it's a surprise, or part of why it's a surprise?
Part of it is that I've never known it any different than people buying from professional photographers their albums and their wall decor. And I mean, I can understand wallets and 8x10s, but to the extent that it has become pervasive in the industry, and that I mean, if you're a professional photographer today, and let's just say you're 27 years old or younger, amazing images and incredibly creative and lots of different styles, but you deliver those images digitally, and you don't turn it into an album or a wall canvas or a framed print. You allow your client to do that. And that's just the extent of that has gone beyond what I thought it would. I think it's circling back around.
Yeah.
And I think over time, things tend to circle back around.
Well, because the clients have discovered.
I think photographers can make X number of dollars selling files, but the good ones finally realize that their client wants to buy stuff from them.
Right.
And their client wants them to tell them what to buy.
Right.
Like, this is the best image, and this would look wonderful on your wall as a 20 by 30 or
what size
24 by 24 square. And here's a frame, and I can have this for you next week.
Well,
if you want to deliver it that quick.
It might have taken a few years, right? For that to occur, because then after 4 or 5 years, people are like, oh, I don't have anything.
Well, these swings take time.
Right.
They take time, and I think we're just really experiencing that to a big degree over the last 3 or 4 years, because it was just the opposite of that earlier. The digital technology hit, and everybody had to go through that switch at the camera level and at the processing and printing level as well. But then there was like products everywhere, and a lot of those products are available not just to the professional market today, but to the consumer market as well. And so we had a number of years, whether it be 4, 5, 6, 7 years of new products and lots of products being sold. And the last 4 or 5 years, it's been more like photographers aren't buying as much as they used to.
Yeah.
And there's probably more photographers and more images.
Right.
And they're being monetized through other places that aren't professional labs.
Right.
And not by the photographers, but by the people who bought the content from the photographer.
By the photographer's clients.
Yeah. And I think that'll swing back around. But when you look at it, say you got a photographer today that's 22, 23, 24 years old. They've grown up with their phone.
Right.
They've never really printed anything. They're very happy to shoot a wedding or shoot a portrait session and turn the files over or deliver the files through a gallery. And I think the vast majorities of the files that go into galleries actually end up being downloaded and printed someplace else.
Right.
We got 4 or 5 of the largest gallery companies in North America that work with us, and we print a lot of stuff, a lot of prints for them.
Right.
But it's I don't know what the percentage of it, it's not a majority of their users that are printing.
Sure.
So I think there's a lot of upside there if it
because of the potential.
Well, I think the potential exists for the photographer and
for
us
both
as the lab.
Right.
And it's a little bit like what we were talking about a few minutes ago. It's actually ends up being a win-win. And actually, it's kind of a win-win-win because it's not just us and not just the photographer, but it's the client.
The client too, right.
And how easily they can get good quality products, whether it be for their wall or their coffee table. These are family heirlooms that'll be around for a long, long time.
Right.
And so, I got a whole bunch of stuff I printed 34 years ago when my oldest son was 1.
Right. Right.
25 years ago when my youngest son was 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I cherish that stuff.
Right.
So
again, with all of this in mind, if you're sitting with somebody or if you're talking with somebody, what sort of challenges do you hear your clients facing? So professional photographers facing today, given everything that you've just said?
Well, I think that's a relative question because the biggest challenge might be a photographer saying the other photographer selling digital files.
Right.
That might be the biggest overriding challenge.
Right.
But it's a challenging marketplace today, and it's not just the photography industry; it's across the board. But it's economics, and you're vying for people's discretionary income, and given the right imagery presented in the right way, people will spend money like crazy.
Right.
For personalized photography. I, as a grandfather, that my pictures of my little grandson, if I had to pay for them, I'd pay a lot of money. So,
yes, you would.
But I get to print all that stuff myself. But no, I just think that the real challenge is getting in front of the client properly. And there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Right.
Whether it's in-person sales or whether it's through an online gallery that is monetizing more than just prints.
Sure.
But monetizing canvases and frame prints and other things.
Right.
Or whether it's having a way to do it in a studio or however you want to do it.
So here you are in 2019. Both boys are in the business. What is the best part of that for you as a dad?
Well, the best part of a family business is watching the next generation grab it and succeed with it.
Yeah.
And have fun with it and enjoy it. In my case, I've been telling people lately because I'm getting older and I'm still working.
Yeah. I'm
working quite a lot.
Yeah.
But, I have a real problem is work's never been work.
Yeah.
Work's what I do and it's fun. And, my wife Diana said to me just a few weeks ago, because I said we're a family business. And she says, we're really not a family business. We're a family in business. And so it's important and it takes time to learn how to separate the personal side of family and the business side of family. But done well, it works very well for everybody all the way around. Mm-hmm. And my boys have never seen eye to eye on everything, and I certainly, I grew up in a family business, so
right.
I understand it. I get it.
Right.
Yeah. So do you.
Right.
And but but given the right effort and the right communication, you celebrate your successes, you understand each other's perspectives, and it works out just fine for everybody concerned. And Tim's 5.5 years younger than Chris, and that's a nice distance,
right, between
them,
right.
And but it's also can be kind of challenging. They're very different, but we're fortunate enough that we have a significant enough business here that we all have our plates full.
Sure.
And we don't have any trouble communicating with each other and balancing it out. And we're all, we're all got things we're really good at. And I think it's like anything else. You learn how to leverage what you're good at and cover what you're not good at.
What are your hopes for them in the company moving forward?
Well, I think it's up to them, and what they carve out for each other. I just hope that the industry stays healthy and that we stay on top of that and we make the right decisions for the right reasons and continue to prosper as a business and a family. I think they have a really good handle on it, quite frankly. I think their skill sets balance out really, really well. And mine too, because I still bring value to the equation here.
Yeah.
So, but the day will come when I'm not there. So, I think they'll do fine. My hopes are just good health,
right?
Continued success, maybe more grandchildren. That'd be all right too. So, but time will tell.
I wanted to give you some room to say
time will tell. Time will tell on that front. But if I'm fortunate enough, I'll be around for quite a while yet, and I can see. I have one grandchild. I'll see more grandkids, and I'll see them grow up and maybe start working one day. You never know.
You are in really great health. As you've gotten older, this is maybe kind of a personal question, but as you've gotten older and you've experienced long-term success, how important has health become as you've aged?
Health is absolutely everything.
Right.
And it's physical and mental.
Yes.
And they actually really kind of go hand in hand. And, a little bit of exercise every day goes a long ways, and not just making you feel better, but making you think better as well. Right. And the mind is kind of a little tricky thing, and it's important to keep it active, but it's also important to exercise from a physical standpoint, which helps keep your mind active. And when you're exercising, you're thinking. And the old saying goes, I thought of that in the shower. Well,
right.
You can think of it while you're running or walking or
right.
or going up down the stairs, and
sure.
And so, I've been I don't want to keep referring to myself as old because I don't think of myself as old, but I've been here for a while, and I've seen people that stay healthy in a lot of ways, either mentally or physically or both. They just live longer.
Yep.
And that's the key. You got to keep moving. You just got to keep moving. If you keep moving, your mind keeps working, and those are all good things. So.
We have the holidays upon us now, so it's ramping up. It's going to be a madhouse here for a while, and then Christmas comes, and after Christmas, everyone kind of takes a sigh of relief, and then we get ready essentially for trade show season.
Well, we turn the corner pretty quick here. The peak season is getting shorter.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of the beast these days, and because the entire world thinks you should have it tomorrow, right. So you don't need to send it in till Christmas Eve.
Well, Amazon hasn't helped.
No. But that's okay, and we're right now here. We're in the middle of October. We're gearing up. I think we added 32 people here this week. We attack the season. There's a tremendous amount of success that can come out of working through the season and doing very, very well, and overcoming the challenges that each day can present. And so we work really hard here 12 months out of the year, whether it's getting ready for the production season or getting ready for the convention stuff. If we work really hard 12 months out of the year, then when we get really, really busy, things go much smoother.
Right, because there's always something on the horizon.
Yes.
Right.
And every year is different. And we actually probably operate 5 or 6 smaller businesses within the overall business, so the seasons are a little bit different from one to the other.
Yeah, they shift.
And some of it's really peaky between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and some of it's a little bit more level throughout the year. So that presents you some nuances from area to area to manage.
Going into, though, after this busy season, going into kind of trade show season, convention season, a lot of people, they get their information online. But you were talking about earlier being in the trenches. Do you see being in person at a show or a convention super important as opposed to just staying at home on your computer? In a relative sense, as being in the trenches that much more important to experience that for people these days?
Well, for me it is.
Right.
Because
we didn't have the resources that are available today, obviously, during those old days that we were talking about.
No, the world's completely different.
And they're great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but I also feel like it's imperative to see people in person.
I think it's a far more enriching experience, and that it can lead to far greater things if you're meeting people and developing those relationships with people. And you can do that at a convention. And I'm not talking about in the convention booth,
right?
Or I'm also not talking about in the bar,
right?
But in the hallways and in the classes, you meet your peers, you trade war stories, and you learn from each other, and you can, I suppose you can do that online, but no, I there's a lot to say for being part of a community. And the photography industry, particularly the portrait wedding segment, is a big community, and there's some big communities within the community.
Right.
From the different shows, and you get the WPPI community and the PPVA community and states and locals and all those things. And a lot of them have struggled the last, decade.
Right.
And I, in my opinion, the organizations that struggle are the ones that aren't providing the value.
Right.
And the ones that actually provide value, people come to and they interact, and it works. And new young educators and different kinds of education about not necessarily just how to light or how to take a portrait, but how do you sell it?
How do you make some money? Yeah.
and because that's one of the very important ingredients in being in business is selling and generating revenue.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons PPVA's been on the rebound the last couple of years, because they've gotten into some business things around selling.
Is that the next big show you'll be at?
Oh, yeah. That's the next one we're going to exhibit at is going to be imaging in January.
In Nashville.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to see you, that's where they should go.
Oh, yeah. Come on down. We'll be there.
Thanks for joining me on this.
We're in the white booth with a blue sign.
This is episode.
Did you talk about everything you want to talk about?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We covered it. We can always go deeper, but we'll handle that in part 2. This was episode 100.
Episode 100?
This conversation with Jed Toffer, presented by Wheelhouse Custom Color.
Wow.
You're number 100.
Jed, I've been getting, for 100 episodes, I've been getting tremendously favorable, positive feedback on you.
I'm very happy.
And
I'm happy that it's going to you.
your ability to converse with people is outstanding.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm just thrilled to be part of that with you.
I appreciate it very much. And thank you for joining me once again.
No problem.